Today, based in France. I'm the managing director of the company called Duffy Marine. We carry out services vessels from small craft up to large super yachts and everything in between. And what I've been asked to talk about today is the key considerations of large yacht survey. I think it's worth just pointing out what the definition of a large yacht. We've all heard the term super yachts, mega yachts, giga yachts, but in actual fact, from a technical point of view, certainly from a surveyor's point of view, a large yacht is defined as a vessel with a 24-meter or over load line. The reason for that is that this is the break point where statutory instruments such as classification society rules and coding for commercial vessels come into force. These are a few vessels that I personally surveyed over the last few years. The first area I would like to look at regarding surveying large yachts, the difference to small yachts, is quoting for the jobs, the contracts, and the planning involved in the process. Firstly, looking at quotations, when we're quoting for a large yacht survey, we're normally dealing with technical representatives. It could be a lawyer, it could be a senior broker, or it could be a technical representative from a management company. We're very rarely having anything whatsoever to do with the principal, in other words, the person that's buying the boat. So your quotation needs to be in a very detailed business style format. It would normally be in a PDF. It would start off with a quick outline of your company, how long you've been in business, where you're based, etc., followed by the number of surveyors you're likely to be involved in the survey, the time frame expected, and moving on to the actual pricing structure. You will often be asked to give a copy of your PI. So it's important to know that your PI covers you for that size of vessel and for the price of the vessel. And again, due diligence on your company might be carried out, or yourself. In other words, you may be asked to give referees or to provide a sample survey. Your contract, when you come to signing for the job, needs to be legally watertight, and that means going back to your PI broker or your underwriters and ensuring that you're completely covered for that size of vessel you're about to undertake. Looking at the MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement between the buyer and the seller, normally the go-to contract is the Mediterranean Yacht Brokers Association contract. Sometimes on very large vessels you have the Norwegian sales form. The reason for the Mediterranean Yacht Brokers Association contract is that it gives the opportunity for a signature by both parties before the condition and sea trial and survey is carried out. With regard to the surveyor, the relevant parts of the MOA you need to know is the time frame, what's been factored into the MOA. You need to know whether a sea trial has been scheduled, whether a call-out has been actually scheduled for the MOA as well. When it comes to the initial planning stages of a large yacht survey, it's essentially a project management exercise at the beginning. It's a case of getting all your ducks in a row and setting up some communication lines between all the stakeholders. These days, you'll often find that a WhatsApp group is set up. So everybody can see what's going on and communicate on the same level. It's very simplistic and very simple way of doing it. We need to contact the subcontractors to ensure that we have engine technicians or vibration analysis people, whatever we need online, and obviously the shipyard needs to be contacted. Whether this is done by the surveyor or the survey company or it's done by the brokers, again, it goes back to communication, so everybody needs to know what's going on. As far as the small craft surveyor moving up to large yachts, it can be quite daunting when you're dealing with professional crew, especially when you're dealing with a captain who may have a mast of 3,000 tons, or he may be an ex-master mariner from the Merchant Navy. the chief engineer, maybe a class 1 engineer, again, commercial from the Merchant Navy or the Royal Navy. You may have to deal with technical representatives from large management companies. And also senior brokers from brokerage houses who have been around in the business for a long time and seen it all before. It's just a case of being professional in your conduct and confident in your manner when you're dealing with these people. The normal procedure when you're starting a survey is to have a startup meeting on board with the captain, the crew, any technical representatives present, the brokers, so everybody knows exactly what's going to be happening over the next few days. We're all on the same page. And this is an opportunity for the captain or crew member to give a safety briefing. Normally, on large yachts, you don't wander around by yourself with a notebook in your hand. You'll be accompanied by a member of the crew as you carry out the survey. That's for safety and security on board. You'll need an area to set up on board, which could be a part of the wheelhouse or bridge, or it could be an area of, say, a dining room, where you could put your laptops and have an area to open up and examine drawings, etc. And it's also a meeting place for you and your colleagues to go along throughout the survey. There's various ways of approaching the survey on board a large yacht. I personally prefer I would take a checklist for a given area of the boat, so the engine room, the bilge area. I would head off with a crew member, inspect that area, make my notes, and I would come back to the setup area, make some notes, talk to my colleagues, and it's always a good chance to have a cup of coffee. And you'll be able to update your files at the same time. Moving on to registry and compliance. Traditionally, large yachts were red flags, and that's simply because of tax structures in places like the Cayman Islands, Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man. They were beneficial and financially beneficial for the owner to register his boat in these offshore islands. Registry, you need to know whether the vessel is commercially registered, whether it's a pleasure, whether it's a yacht engaged in trade, for instance, where it switches between commercial and pleasure, and allowed 84 days a year on the places like the commercial islands, the Cayman Islands or Marshall Islands. We need to know what its tonnage is, so we know the break points, 200 tons, 300, 400, 500 tons upwards. So we know what statutory instruments we can expect to have to deal with. Again, with classification, we need to know when the last call out for inspection for class was carried out. We need to know that we need to examine the class documentation. We should be able to get all this information in advance, but sometimes it's not possible. We have to look when we get on board. We need to be able to look at the stability information booklet, so we can see if there's any changes or amendments on board. If someone's stuck a new jacuzzi up, but nobody bothered to do any changes to the stability. And we need to know when the last light shift test was carried out. Dry docking. This is a 60-meter motor yacht, the dry dock in Marseille. There's various shipyards have various ways of dry docking. There's the standard grading dock, or there's the hydro lift type of lift of docks. There's the travel lifts. These days, some shipyards have got a 1,000-ton travel lift. Under the underwater inspection in lieu of dry docking system for classification society, this is used by large ships and by some large yachts as well. So instead of lifting the vessel out, which is expensive and time consuming, they use certified divers or ROVs to inspect the hull. We'll often use divers instead of hauling the vessel out. That's been recently dry docked for class. It's important to ensure that the dive team you're using is classification society certified. Moving on to the hull cleaning, it could take a couple of hours to clean a hull of a 50-foot sailboat, but it could take a day to 2 days to clean a 50-60-meter hull, so it has to be factored in if that's what you're going to need to do. You may need to order equipment in advance with the shipyards, such as the lifts. And you may need to organise a UTM inspection, ultrasound thickness measurements. You may want to do it yourself if you're qualified. You may want to do critical area examinations, or you may want to organise a subcontractor. You may ask the shipyard to carry out shaft clearance tests on the main propeller shafts or on the stabiliser shaft in place. And then it's a standard inspection of the whole shell plates, running gear, through hull inspections, and an assessment of the paintwork. The sea trial is probably the most pivotal point of any marine survey, as far as I'm concerned, whether it's a small craft or it's a large superyacht. This is a 60-meter fed ship that we surveyed a couple of years ago, of Monaco. So looking at the sea trial, the organisation for the sea trial, it may just, with a small craft, 30 or 40 foot multi-yacht, it's a case of chucking the lines out, heading out the harbour and doing the tests and potting back in again. With a large yacht, it's a little bit more logistically demanding. For instance, we may need a pilot to get in and out the harbour. There may be anchors to lift, divers to put down to clear lines under the boat. It's entirely up to the captain how he goes about it, but it's very time consuming. It could take an hour to 2 hours just to clear the harbour. We have to organise the logistics of the sea trial in advance so everything runs smoothly. The main point is the engines on large yachts, obviously, and we would engage engine manufacturers' technicians on board. They would normally come on board and do a cold examination of the engines and then examine the startup. They will then connect up their laptop computers and run software. And then we do an endurance run, maybe an hour, 2 hours, depending on the size of the vessel and the equipment being used to do the analysis. They'll run a software. The software runs over a period of time, and we use steps from 200, 300, 400, 500 RPM increases. Again, depending on the software that's being used. While this is happening, the endurance run is happening to examine the engine. We would examine the GMDS, the navigation equipment on board on the bridge. We'd also carry out sound and vibration tests. The sound is normally done in 2 parts. We'll do a static test while the vessel's either alongside or anchor. And that would involve running one generator and the air conditioning on board in 50% load. Take sound readings throughout the vessel static, and then underway, normally cruising speed or maybe a bit higher, whatever we specify. We would take sound readings again. Obviously, that would involve having both engines running one generator and air conditioning. Vibration analysis. I would normally use a handheld accelerometer, and I would check vibration levels of the engine mounts, the engine tops, top of the gearboxes, thrust bearings, etc. And sometimes I'll also check the base of large exhaust systems that are residual, have mountings on them. When it comes to manoeuvring, we do the test in line with the in accordance with the Classification Society test for manoeuvring a vessel. However, you would have time to do all of them. So mainly we would do a 360 turn port, 360 turn to starboard, a 15-degree zigzag to port starboard. They slow down. We wouldn't do a crash stop down to Classification Society. We do a background test. We test the main steering systems and the emergency. We would check the stabilizers, both underway and rest, if it's got 0 speed mode. We would check the thrusters, 30 degrees to port and starboard under load. And then moving on to the anchors, we would do a deep water drop. which is usually 3 shackles down if you've got enough water to do it. And then we would time the pulling up 2 shackles. It's normally within 6 minutes. You pull up 2 shackles. Hydraulics. The vessel fitted with hydraulic swim platforms, balconies. We would test those at this time. Part of the scene as well, we're obviously to be able to test dependence. If you have instructions to fully then it means dropping them in the water and taking a spin around the boat, for instance. Or it may not be required to do a full test of dependence, just a physical examination. But we definitely load test along the davits and any cranes on board. Dock trials, then this is the engine room of a, I think it's a 55 or 60 meter, very shiny. So the dock trials will involve electrical fuel oil, etc. Looking at the electrical system, normally large yachts have 400 volt 3-phase electricity on board. And obviously, if you're not fully qualified marine engineer or electrical engineer, not really advisable to be opening up electrical panels, etc. So you'd have to, we're looking to have one in our team, a particular engineer on our team. Otherwise, you have to organize a subcontractor to make an assessment of the generators, shore power system, and the electrical distribution throughout the vessel. Looking at the fuel oil system, we'd examine the bunkering station on board, the fuel transfer system, the day tankage. We would look at the tank tops. We wouldn't open up tanks normal. We would examine the treatment system we've got on board, such as alcohol valve separator. Large vessels will also be equipped with an oily water separator, which cleans bilge water before it's pumped over the side. This must reach 15 parts per million, otherwise it shuts down and up the alarm, so we would test that one. The life-saving appliances and the firefighting equipment are tested, including pumps, main pumps and auxiliary pumps. We would run a hose from a hydrant off the bow and stern to check the pressure. And the alarm and monitoring system throughout the vessel will also be tested. Watertight doors, if it's equipped with them below the weather deck, we would test the operation and the alarms fitted to the watertight doors. And at this point, we'll probably take fluid samples. Normally after a sea trial, we take oil samples from the main engines, gearboxes, generator. We sometimes take coolant samples if it's required. And we may take lubricating oil from a stern tubing. The hotel systems, a freshwater system will be fitted with a purification system, so that needs to be checked and assessed. The black water and grey water systems on board are normally run through the treatment plant, through the hammer. If this is in commission, we need to check that to make sure it's fully operational. Looking at the hotel side of the vessel. For the buyer, as we can imagine, this is probably the most critical part. They often get skirted over, but you could find that damage to a marble bathroom or a gold-plated toilet seat is far more expensive than a broken down pump in the engine room. So it needs to be looked at in detail. We have a interior consultant with an ex-chief stewardess. She works for us, so she goes throughout the boat and is able to examine all the pictures and furnishings and lighting for quality. The audio vision on IT on board, if you go back a few years, we used to find large rack rooms which were air conditioned. So these days you just find that they're using Sonos systems and connecting up with their own iPhones when they step on board. And of course now the vessel to be fitted with Starlink, it's simplified the old audio visual and IT systems on board these large vessels. The air conditioning system needs to be tested throughout the vessel on local controls. And we need to test the modes, whether it's summer or winter modes, make sure it's all working correctly. And then baths, bathrooms, and laundry need to be tested for and checked that everything's fully operational. Carrying out reporting on large vessels. A slightly different approach to doing small craft reporting, in the sense that the format and style of delivery of the report is very industry standardized. It's not a coincidence that commercial ships, E&I reports, Certification Society reports, or registry reports are all table format with a checklist on the side. That's everybody's using the same system, easy to upload. And certainly P&I inspection based, the whole report is uploaded. Some companies are operating online where they're actually surveying the boats in real time. As far as the format is concerned, the way that you're going to present it, it's entirely up to the individual surveyor. But I think we have to be honest throughout the industry that if we put our hand on that heart, what does the client want? Certainly on a pre-purchase survey, the client is looking at what he really wants to know is a list of defects. So we can either reject the vessel or we can negotiate the price of the vessel. And that's it. That's the bottom line. That's what he's looking for. As far as your small craft survey report is concerned, it's going to be read normally by the people that are going to buy the boat. So they would find it interesting. When it comes to a large yacht survey, that's not going to happen. It's going to be read by technical representatives. It's going to be read by law firms. And that's what their main focus of attention is, the defects list. So I find personally that a lot of small craft surveys are over-reporting. One way to take a viewpoint on this is to change the word and mentally change the word survey, which is quite a weak term, it's a weak verb, to use the word after an inspection of the general condition of the vessel. The temptation is to over-report, I've found. So we need to keep it. Again, for small craft surveyors, again, it's being read by the chaps buying the boat. So we need to bear in mind when we're writing a report for a large yacht that your recommendations for that defect is going to be read by a technical inspector, it's going to be read by a law firm. So they're going to be negotiating the price of the vessel or rejecting it on your defect recommendations, rather than on whether you personally think the vessel is a nice seaworthy boat that we can have some fun on. So it's just a different, slightly different approach, and you need to have a more professional approach and don't over-report. We'll need to collate the subcontractors' reports along with the fluid sample results. They usually go at the end as annexes into the report. We will often be asked to give an interim report. Now, this interim report is going back to our list of defects. Basically, what's being asked is an interim report while they're waiting for other subcontractors and fluid sample reports to come in. So it's merely an interim report, list of defects, so they can start the negotiations on. It's important that your interim report is still has the T's and C's and all the waivers, etc., included in it. I'm very clearly stated in there that it is not and should never be taken as a full pre-purchase report. Going back to photos, having a look at photos, it's often suggested to small craft surveys that they shouldn't include photos in their reports. I have a different slant towards that. I think a photo tells 1,000 words. We will often have between 100, 150, sometimes 200 photos taken during a large yacht survey. These photos are then annotated. For instance, if it's a defect, it will stay underneath it very clearly that it's a defect. And it will say, for instance, corrosion, port overboard discharge valve. If it's, say, a photograph of the main salon, it will simply say general view main salon. These photographs are then put into a zip file, and a link is given to the client so we can download. We've been doing that for many years, and I know lots of other surveyors are doing the same thing. Just touching again on the reporting. It's a report on the results of your inspection of the general condition of the vessel at the time of the survey. One thing it's not supposed to be a technical specification, nor is it supposed to be an operator's manual. Once your report is being used for its purpose and the sail has gone through and the vessel has actually pulled its lines off the dock and taken off, it becomes completely obsolete. It will go in the file somewhere for reference, but that's about it. So in conclusion, what we need to have when we're dealing with the key aspects, key considerations of a professional approach, is a professional approach to quotations. We need planning, preparation, and communication at the setup of the survey. And we need to have an organised inspection procedures on board. And our reporting needs to be clear, professional, and just bearing in mind the people who are going to be reading it, our technical inspectors, law firms, or senior brokers. Sometimes we're lucky, instead of examining and surveying 3 or 4 tiered wedding cake motor yachts, we get to survey a railroad like this one. I hope this will have some interest for everyone, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to Phil. I hope you found that helpful. That's his bag. He's based in the south of France, and he does a lot of those. But there was some stuff there, I think, that filtered from the large yacht into the small craft arena. So good. Thanks to Phil. As I say, he wanted to be here himself, but couldn't be.
Agreed on whether we should put a photo in a survey report. What chance of agreeing 4 mil is there?
No, absolutely done. Yeah, I take your point. Okay.